Broadcast with a piece of paper from the Quezon City Regional Trial Court Branch 105. That paper certifies that there is no record that Bongbong Marcos complied with the payment or satisfaction of the decisions of the RTC in July 1995 or of the Court of Appeals in October 1997. This means there is no record that Marcos ever paid his tax deficiencies and his fines following his conviction for failure to file his tax returns in the 80s.
Petitioners seeking to cancel a certificate of candidacy for president will bring this before the COMELEC to further cement their case that Marcos has yet to serve his sentence. When pressed for comments, the Marcos camp said they would rather not supply petitioners with missing facts. Good evening, I'm Maricel Halili.
And I'm Ed Lingao. You're watching The Big Story. Has he really served his sentence? This now becomes the big challenge on Bongbong Marcos' presidential ambitions after a Quezon City court said there is no record to show that he has paid the fines for his tax case conviction.
Should it be proven that he did not settle these fines, a former Associate Justice and Isambayan convener believes this is a stronger ground for moral turpitude. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro gives us a front seat to the big story.
Bongbong Marcos was convicted of not having filed his tax returns from 1982 to 1985. But now comes another question. Did Marcos pay the fines ordered by the court? The group petitioning for the cancellation of Marcos's candidacy released a certificate from the Cusi RTC Branch 105, stating they have no records of Marcos ever paying as ordered by the courts. The court ordered Marcos to pay a fine of 36,000 in his deficiency income taxes with interest. One Sambayan convener and former Supreme Court Justice Antonio Carpio says Marcos himself has been mum on whether he paid the fines or not.
Marcos himself, through his lawyer, Estelito Mendoza, he did not present proof. He did not attach proof of payment of the fine and penalties.
Under the Omnibus Election Code, a candidate convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude is disqualified from public office for at least 5 years after serving his sentence. But Attorney Domingo Cayosa, former president of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, said the clock hasn't even begun for Marcos.
Until that is paid, he hasn't served the sentence.
Marcos lawyer Estelito Mendoza told the COMELEC that the order for Marcos to pay the BIR deficiency income taxes was not clear. What's clear, he says, is that Marcos should pay a fine of 6,000 for 3 criminal cases and another 30,000 for a 4th case. It's unclear whether these were also paid.
So it's up to Marcos now to present the record if he has a receipt.
For Carpio, non-payment of fines is a stronger ground for moral turpitude. He adds this further strengthens their case for material misrepresentation. But even outside the issue of the petitions, Cayosa said Marcos could still face consequences from the courts almost 20 years since the sentence.
He should be compelled by the courts issued the resolution to pay under pain of contempt and imprisonment.
Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, We Are One News.
The camp of Bongbong Marcos in its response said that they have complied with the judgment of the QC, RTC, and the Court of Appeals. When asked whether any of the fines were left unsettled, Marcos spokesperson Attorney Vic Rodriguez said he will not supply petitioners with missing facts.
The petitioners should have done a complete due diligence before they have done with the filing of their cases. We are not here to supply, and I will not supply them, all the missing facts that are needed in their petition.
Now, how does this development color the chances of the cancellation petition against Marcos Jr.? That big story and more with election lawyer, Attorney Enrique de la Cruz. Good evening, Attorney de la Cruz, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the big story.
Good evening, Ed, and thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Well, prior to this day, the big debate was whether or not Marcos was found guilty of a crime that involves moral turpitude. But today, mukhang nagbago yung tanong. Parang ngayon, the question is whether or not na-settle ba yung kanyang, and we quote, sentence imposed by the RTC and the Court of Appeals. To begin with, does this question have any bearing on the petitions pending before the COMELEC?
Yes, Ed, no? And the lawyer of Senator Bongbong Marcos is correct in saying that this should have been included in the allegations of the petitioners because the burden of proof rests on the petitioner. Ang bearing niya ay dalawang bagay, no? Kasi kung mali ang allegation ng petition, halimbawa, pinagsama mo sa petition yung disqualification at cancellation na parehong ground naman ang ginagamit, o pwedeng ma-dismiss yung petition no? Dahil mali yung ginamit mong ground or mali ang ginamit mong rules, pinagsama mo. Pangalawa, kung mali ang allegation mo, kung nagbayad siya o hindi siya nagbayad, mag-a-affect yon sa prescriptive period, no? Kasi yung 5 years prescriptive period, meaning siya ay disqualified within 5 years from service of sentence.
From service of sentence.
So kung ang sentence ay multa, mula sa pagbayad ng multa, 5 years yung kanyang disqualification. So dapat kung magpa-file ka ng petition na pinapa-disqualify mo siya, ikaw na petitioner ang mag-a-allege, no? Kung kailan siya disqualified. Hindi po pwedeng shotgun na sabihin mong feeling ko disqualified na siya. So it has a bearing on the petition.
In which case you're saying that the petitions should have been more specific as to the allegations and to the charges involved.
Correct, correct.
What about, sir? What if there is basis nga na hindi nabayaran yung fines or yung tax deficiencies? Is it just a matter of settling the amounts involved, or is there any complication to that?
Well, if it is established that the fines were not paid, it means that the reckoning period for the 5 years disqualification period still applies. So kung hindi pa ito nababayaran, yung 5 taon na hindi siya pwedeng tumakbo ay hindi pa natatapos.
Yes,
So
sir.
magagamit pa yun sa kanya para ma-disqualify siya.
Yes, sir. Kumbaga, hindi nga tumakbo yung relo, kumbaga. Pero maliban po doon, is there anything else that he could be held liable for if in the last 20 years ay hindi nabayaran yung fines?
Well, he can be compelled to pay the fines plus interest because the judgment in 1995 stated that pay the fines plus interest. And he can also be held liable for not paying the fines, no? And I agree that also constitutes moral turpitude.
Okay, maraming salamat po. Election lawyer, Attorney Enrique de la Cruz, thank you for joining us tonight. And here are the other election stories that we are watching. During a sortie in Bulacan, presidential aspirant and Manila Mayor Isko Moreno said he will quit politics should he fail to get elected as president in next year's polls. If he wins, however, Moreno says he will retire after his term ends. Senatorial aspirant Harry Roque, meanwhile, told 1PH's Sotto that he may be holding a grudge against one unnamed presidentiable, saying that he was not offered a slot in their senatorial slate. He then clarified that it was neither Pacquiao nor Moreno. The tandem of Marcos Jr. and Mayor Sara Duterte adopted Roque in their senatorial lineup last week. And President Duterte said that he respects the decision of his longtime aide Senator Bongo to withdraw his presidential bid. For now, Duterte remains mum on who he will endorse for the 2022 elections.
These are the other big stories tonight. With the easing of restrictions in Apayao, the entire country is now under alert level 2. But elsewhere in the globe, the World Health Organization warns of a continuous uptrend in cases. With the looming threat of the Omicron variant, the country reimposes more stringent quarantine and testing requirements for travelers from overseas. The country remains Omicron-free, but 100 more travelers from red list countries have yet to be tracked. And in an interview with ABC, actor Alec Baldwin breaks his silence after the fatal shooting of his cinematographer on set. These big stories after the break. Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm
And-
Maricel Halid.
And I'm Ed Lingao. The government is starting to implement stricter border controls amid the Omicron scare, with the IATF introducing new protocols for travelers testing and quarantine.
Despite that, restrictions are now looser across the country as the Apayao transitions to Alert Level 2, effectively putting the entire Philippines under the said alert level. Here's my report. As the holiday season nears, many overseas Filipinos are expected to make their way back to the Philippines. But entry to the country just got stricter, even for territories not included in the red list. As mandated by the IATF beginning December 3, fully vaccinated travelers should present a negative RT-PCR test result taken 72 hours prior to departure. They will undergo facility-based quarantine upon arrival. They will take an RT-PCR test on the 5th day and complete the remainder of the 14-day quarantine at home. The same rule applies for the partially vaccinated and unvaccinated, save for the quarantine rules. They would have to take a test on the 7th day of quarantine. They may then complete the remainder of the 14-day isolation at home. Minors will follow the testing and quarantine protocols of the parent or guardian traveling with them.
Na may balak umuwi ngayong Pasko. Sana ay maintindihan po natin kung bakit natin kailangan i-revise ang guidelines. Whatever changes or amendments adopted are prompted by a continuous assessment of prevailing conditions. Tuloy-tuloy po ang assessment natin ng mga development sa buong mundo.
For those coming from red list countries, entry point will only be at NAIA and at the Clark International Airport. Commercial flights are not allowed, exception for those part of repatriation efforts and bayanihan flights.
Sa mga stranded nating kababayan sa Europa na nangangailangan ng emergency assistance o nais na bumalik sa Pilipinas, you are advised to contact the nearest Philippine embassy.
While they want restrictions eased, the business sector is backing the strict travel guidelines.
This is temporary at sabi ni Doc Ed Salvani, temporary until we get to understand how contagious is Omicron. Will there be more breakthroughs? Are our vaccines resilient? Will it prevent us from severe and hospitalization? So I think it's okay that we go through this. Unang defense natin to is to somehow be more conservative, no? But let's not panic.
The country remains Omicron variant free, and with cases reaching new lows, the entire country has now been placed under alert level 2. And with cases reaching new lows, the entire country has now been placed under alert level 2 after restrictions in the Apayao have been downgraded. For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
Cases may be declining in the Philippines, but elsewhere in the globe, infections have been on an uptrend even before the first case of the Omicron variant was reported in South Africa. The World Health Organization has seen a steady increase in cases for the past 7 weeks. On Wednesday alone, more than 600,000 cases and 7,000 deaths were reported. The US accounted for over 100,000 infections. The WHO attributes this to increased mobility, social mixing, easing travel restrictions, and complacency.
We should not be complacent because of the border control, or we should not just rely on the border control and to be ready. And this time, the Omicrons, the data suggests that potentially higher transmissibility. So what is very important is to prepare and be ready for this next surge.
While information remains scarce, the WHO is still working with experts to know more about the Omicron variant. So far, what they know is that the variant poses a higher risk of reinfection. Its higher number of mutations also suggests a faster rate of transmission. With this, the WHO warns of possible surges. The Philippines remains Omicron-free after retests of the 3 South African nationals who went to Negros Occidental yielded negative results. The thing is, 182 travelers from South Africa who arrived in the Philippines from November 15 to 29 have yet to be verified. During that period, the country had 253 arrivals, most of whom are overseas Filipinos. The Bureau of Quarantine has so far contacted only 71 of these travelers.
It's day one of the rollout of booster shots for the general adult population. But not everyone got their additional dose, as they have yet to fulfill the required interval before getting that booster shot. Mon Gualvez with the story.
People are still coming at this vaccination site in Mandaluyong. It is, after all, the last day of the extended Bayanihan Bakunahan. Some were hoping to get their booster shot. Government gave the go signal for the general adult population to get additional doses. Marilu, however, was unlucky.
Hindi pa daw po papayde. 6 months pa daw po. Kasi di ba mayroon na naman pong bagong variant. Hindi natin alam yung mangyayari na naman para safety din po para sa akin at saka para din po sa mga relatives ko.
Per DOH guidelines, a 6-month interval after primary doses is needed before getting a booster. Save for single-dose Janssen, where only a 3-month gap is needed. Some senior citizens who got the green light first for boosters also did not qualify.
Siyempre, katulad namin mga senior, kinakailangan po maayos ang katawan ng tao. December 9 po kami babalik. Thank you na lang po. Kinakailangan sumunod tayo sa utos eh.
Mixing of vaccine brands is also being monitored. Most brands allow homologous or same brand use. Those who had Sputnik V or Janssen, however, should go heterologous or the use of a different brand. With this, the National Task Force Against COVID-19 in an interview with 1PH reminds vaccinees to always bring their vaccination card.
Ang hahanapin po sa inyo ay ang inyong vaccination card para ma-establish yung 6 na buwan na nakalipas at yung klase ng bakuna na natanggap nyo nung kahuli-hulihan.
Vaccination site personnel are trying to ensure that these protocols are being followed.
Mahirap naman po na hindi naka-schedule. Paghihintayin po natin, sayang po ang oras nila. Pagdating po sa loob, hindi pala.
The vaccine expert panel's Doc Nina Gloriani told One News The Big Story that the threat of the Omicron variant pushed the earlier rollout of boosters for the entire adult population. Meanwhile, during the 3-day vaccination drive, government was able to administer 8 million doses out of its 9 million target. For News 5, Mon Gualvez, we are One News.
Sotto back out on the floor. That looked good. That looked really good.
The highly anticipated debut of Kai Sotto in the National Basketball League of Australia has been put on hold. This was after the team said that Sotto will miss the opening game of the Adelaide 36ers due to knee soreness. Sotto took to Instagram to show how his knee looked like during the peak of his injury. Sotto managed to rack up 7 points, 5 boards, and 1 block during Adelaide's first preseason game.
Sotto on the move, lays it up. Are you winning a game?
On the other hand, the Philippine Azkals are in full preparation mode for the AFF Suzuki Cup, which is set from December 5 to January 1. Ready to make his debut for the national team is recently naturalized player Bienvenido Marañon. The Azkals begin their campaign against host nation Singapore on December 8.
Grizzlies double-digit blocks in each of the last 2 games. Dylan stepping through the lane and scoring.
Meanwhile, 2 records were broken in the NBA on Friday. The Memphis Grizzlies sent the Oklahoma City Thunder to the NBA record books after their 152-79 victory. The Grizzlies gave the Thunder a 73-point thrashing, which became the new record for the biggest margin of victory in NBA history.
Man, he looked good against Portland. A scene for DA and the reverse.
Elsewhere, the Phoenix Suns set a new franchise record for most wins in a row, beating the Detroit Pistons 114-103. Taking their 18th straight victory, Phoenix also now owns the league's best record at 19-3. Kiko D'Emilio, we are One News.
Time for another quick break. When we return, with thousands of vaccines expiring in Negros Occidental, the health department is now looking at the possibility of extending the shelf life of COVID jobs. Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi has filed libel complaints against several media outlets over the reporting of Malampaya share sale. Actor Alec Baldwin breaks his silence. He has denied responsibility for the fatal shooting of a cinematographer on the set of his Western movie Rust. These big stories after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Edmund Gao.
And I'm Maricel Halili. Thousands of AstraZeneca vaccines expired in Negros Occidental just weeks after the doses arrived in the province.
Apart from investigating the incident, the health department is also studying the possibility of extending the shelf life of COVID jabs. Faith Del Mundo with the story.
While the rest of the country was busy ramping up vaccinations, some 14,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccines expired in Negros Occidental. The shots, which expired last November 30, were part of the 45,300 doses that arrived in the province last November 8. They were donations from the COVAX facility. Provincial Administrator Refrando Diaz II said doctors manning vaccine sites did not use the supply since the shots were nearing expiration.
If it has no potency, they will be given a false sense of security na akala nila protected na sila from the virus. Yung pala, hindi naman.
The province is now appealing to the national government.
We would like to accept vaccines that are far from their expiry date, sana, so that we can have more time to work for its disposal or for its inoculation to our vaccinees.
The health department is now looking into the issue to find out who is liable and to prevent similar incidents.
So we are still further investigating this. Ang ginawa na po ng DOH ay quinarantin na itong mga bakuna na near expiring na to na ayaw tanggapin.
The expired vaccines, which are still in Negros cold storage facility, will be returned to the DOH. The agency is now looking at the possibility of extending the vaccine's typical 6 months shelf life. Spokesperson Maria Rosario Berjeres says they are negotiating with vaccine manufacturers to apply for an amendment to the EUA.
Nakita nila yung posibilidad na pwede pang i-extend yung shelf life at epektibo pa rin ang mga bakuna. Kaya nag-apply sila, and this is what we are doing right now with AstraZeneca as well.
U.S. drug maker Pfizer has so far been the first to move for an extension of its vaccine shelf life in the country. For News 5, Faith Del Mundo, we are One News.
Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi has filed libel complaints against several news publications over the Malampaya issue. Cusi has sued reporters, editors, and corporate executives of ABS-CBN, Business World, Rappler, Philstar, Global, Manila Bulletin, GMA, and Business Mirror. This is for allegedly destructive articles related to the Malampaya shares sale. In a statement, Cusi said he is filing the cases to protect the integrity of public servants, to defend his family's honor, and to send a strong message that there is a fair way to settle misunderstandings without resorting to malicious news reporting.
And here are the other big stories around the world. A building in the United Nations headquarters compound in Manhattan was locked down after police saw a shotgun-wielding man in his 60s. Police cordoned the area off as authorities tried to talk to the man. According to reports, the man had what appeared to be medical records and some documents that he said he wanted to deliver to the UN. After a 2-hour standoff, the man finally surrendered to the police. And after being closed off to the public last year, revelers this year witnessed the lighting of the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree in New York. The 89th annual lighting was aired live on NBC. 50,000 multicolored LED lights and a 900-pound star covered in 3 million crystals brought life to the spectacle. The Rockefeller Christmas tree will be on display until early January 2022.
The goals of generations Y and Zs may not be different from the generations before them, at least financially. Speaking on agenda, Manulife President and CEO Richard Bates said the younger generation share the same dreams and aspirations of their older counterparts, one of which is financial stability. Bates added that about 80% of Generation Y, or those aged around 25 to 35 years old, have already bought insurance as a key investment. It is also true to 60% of the Generation Z or younger adults.
And let's focus on the Z, are still very, very focused on making sure that they have a stable income, a stable lifestyle, and that they are able to, as I say, look after their future and make sure they protect for it.
Through sobs, actor Alec Baldwin denies responsibility for the fatal shooting on the film set of his movie, Rust. In an exclusive interview with ABC News anchor George Stephanopoulos, he said he did not pull the gun's trigger during rehearsal. The incident killed cinematographer Halyana Hutchkins. He also added that he was following instructions in the final moments before his prop gun went off.
I might have killed myself if I thought I was responsible. I don't say that lightly.
Emotional Baldwin then expresses admiration for the deceased crew member.
She was someone who was loved by everyone who worked with and liked by everyone who worked with and admired.
Two crew members, meanwhile, have filed civil lawsuits against Baldwin, the producers, and others for negligence and lax safety protocols. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
Still not feeling the Christmas spirit? That's definitely not the case in Quezon Province.
The entire province was lit up with Christmas lights and decor as the holiday approaches. Face shields that were no longer used were turned into lanterns. Residents also helped out by collecting plastic bottles and cups on the beach, which were turned into colorful Christmas decor. And even the province's big Christmas star was made from recycled materials.
According to Quezon Mayor Maria Caridad Clasio, they noticed that most of the homes did not have Christmas decor, hence the urge to make their people feel the spirit of Christmas even through simple means.
Bagaman po tayo ay nasa gitna ng pandemya, at nahaharap po tayo sa panibago na namang hamon dun po sa bagong variant, ay pagtitingnan po natin itong mga ilaw na ito, nagbibigay po tayo ng kasiyahan, ng pag-asa na sa mga darating pong panahon ay mawawala na po ang ating mga takip sa ating mukha.
Why not?
Yeah, that's a good way to make use of your unused PPEs.
Sayang naman kasi yung mga face shield, di ba? Mang-uso ngayon yan, yung mga recycled. Although I still don't have Christmas decorations.
Ingat lang kayo, baka yung Omicron lumala, kailangan nyo ulit yung face shield.
Ay, oo nga. Lalo na ngayon, malapit ang holiday, 22 days to go before Christmas. Tuloy pa rin ang Pasko, mga kapatid. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again on Monday at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. On behalf of Robbie Lampay, I'm Edlin Gao.
And on behalf of Gretchen Ho, I'm Maricel Halili. We are One News. Good evening.